and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail, and my guest today is somebody you've seen once before on Doc Hamill's program, Chautauqua Sunrise. Her name is Mary Ellen Humphrey, and we are here today because she wrote kind of an autobiography, and the title is My Mountain Friend.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for appearing on Fresh Perspectives today.
I would put this in the genre of memoir. So
memoir.
This is a memoir, and it's a lot of times when you write a memoir, you sort of zero in on something specific. Mm-hmm. This covers a period of about 10 years of my life, and it's a period of time where I had to deal with some personal traumas and things from my life experiences.
From past before that 10-year period,
right.
Yes.
And
yes.
so the book is about how a mountain, my mountain friend, which is Mount Major in Alton Bay, New Hampshire. And it's
Alton Bay, New Hampshire?
Yes,
okay.
And it's how I started hiking this mountain and discovered this amazing magic. I would have to put it in that category because when you get to the top, it's not a huge mountain. It's 2,100 feet. It takes, according to the Appalachian Mountain Club, you can easily reach the summit in 2 hours.
Okay.
An average hiker, not somebody who's, racing, but my record time was 38 minutes.
38 minutes.
Just brag a little.
Were you running?
I was pretty good back then. I couldn't do it today. And so this is a mountain that I hiked. It was near my home. It took me 20 minutes to get there, so I would go several times a week. And I started by introduced to it by a friend who was grieving. He was grieving the loss of his wife of 44 years who had died of cancer. And he and his wife used to hike it, and he said, Mary Ellen, why don't you come? It's a beautiful place, and we'll go do this hike. So his picture is in the book. And he was a retired police officer. So I felt safe. One of the things I had to do, I was married for a very long time, and when I found myself single in my early 50s, I had to relearn a whole bunch of things, and I had to gain confidence in myself and do things and sort of step outside of my comfort zone. And so when I hiked this mountain with Ed, I was exposed to this beautiful trail and summit, and I decided that I was going to do it by myself. I had fun with him, it was great, but I wanted to go back and experience it without the chatter of a companion, or just to see if I could do it. Could I make it to the top? And I had noticed when I was hiking it with him, there were single women, sometimes with a dog on a leash or something, but there were single women hiking it. And so I thought, I can do this. And I had to muster my courage. I almost didn't do it, and I can't imagine my life if I had not done it, because it became such a part of my experience for that time frame. So I know you read the book.
I did read the book. I sure did. Okay. Let's see here. Now there's a parking lot. They actually have a parking lot by the mountain.
Yes. This treasure really was a state park for a while, and it came under just as I was leaving 3 years ago. It was purchased by an organization called the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests.
Okay.
And they have become the stewards of this, and they redid the parking lot, and they put in porta potties, and they did all kinds of improvements. They fixed the trail. Now, every summer, approximately 100,000 people hike this trail. So you can imagine the wear and tear on there's 3 trails. So, it's incredible really when you think about how you can wear away a trail. But there's huge gouges and missing rocks and all kinds of things. So they came in and they fixed a lot of that, and they're now the stewards of it. And I was so pleased when I heard that, because I had New Hampshire's a small state. There's a little over 1 million people, so it's not a huge state, and so you know a lot of people. And I had encountered the Forest Society in several different ways throughout my life. At one time I was their accountant. I did their bookkeeping. Another time I was the executive director for a nonprofit that rented in their space, their conservation center. So I had connections with them. And so I ended up adding to the book a page dedicated to who they were and how anyone who's interested in this particular mountain can, be a member and help with that. So I think that's really important to give that note. A lot of us who were regular hikers were concerned what would happen to this mountain. Was it going to be bought by a private developer? Was it going to be lost to the public?
Oh my gosh,
we were really worried.
It could have been they cut the forest on it down and built a whole bunch
you just see
of
the
houses and things.
The view of Lake Winnipesaukee is the mountains, the valley. It has the lake in it, and that is the lake in New Hampshire. There's little lakes like Squam Lake and different ones, but Winnipesaukee it's just viewed as the biggest lake. Of course, now that I'm here, and I see your lakes that look like oceans, I was like, wow, because it's nothing like Lake Erie, but it is the premier lake in New Hampshire, and it's very expensive.
How does it compare in size to Chautauqua Lake?
It's much bigger than Chautauqua Lake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a big lake. It is a big lake, but it's not like the Great Lakes. It's nothing like that. It's a fraction of what they are.
It's somewhere in between Chautauqua and Erie for size.
Somewhere.
Okay.
And it's a very exclusive area. A lot of people from Boston and whatnot have, over many years, have come there, and celebrities and whatnot. So property on the lake is extremely expensive. You're looking at millions of dollars to have a place there. So. But there's all these other recreational areas like Mount Major that overlook that, where you can enjoy a lot of the amenities of the lake.
Okay. Well, I'm going to move a question up that I had for later. Now, is your book available to be acquired by people who might want to read it?
Yes. The book is, of course, you can get it on Amazon. Just Google me, Mary Ellen Humphrey, and My Mountain Friend, and you'll find it. But it's also available in Westfield at Genres Bookstore.
Genres Bookstore?
Yes. Do you know where that is?
No, it must be a fairly new business.
Well, the YMCA has an L-shaped room, which is Genres Bookstore.
Oh, it's inside the Y building.
It's inside the Y building. And she, the nice lady that's running it, features a lot of local authors. So there's a whole section of local authors, and all of my books are there, or most of my books are there as well. We're actually going to be doing a local authors book fair on June 4th, but coming up, so we get to meet more authors. But we all try to, I really believe in being supportive and helping one another. In writing is a very solitary business. You sit there with your computer or your pencil or whatever, and you spend many hundreds of hours writing a book and editing a book and whatnot. So it's really important that we have a community that's supportive of authors. And so I write whatever's in my heart. I'm not looking to be, a Pulitzer Prize winning author or something, but I write those things that I think matter to me. And this book is very dear to my heart, because during the 10-year period that I began hiking this mountain, thanks to my friend Ed, I did go back, and I did get out of my car, which was a huge thing because I start to panic. I get lost very easily. I'm directionally challenged. And so I'm thinking I'm going up this trail, and I know there's notches, there's blue, and there's yellow, and there's orange, depending on the trail you're on, but I didn't know any of that when I first started. And I had all I could do to force myself to go onto the trail. But once I did, the mountain is so special. It's so peaceful. I don't know what the word is, but it's welcoming to you.
Somehow, as you walked on that first hike, according to what I read, you became more and more relaxed.
Yes, I did. I was so glad when I reached the summit the first time by myself. I mean, I must have looked like a nutty person because I'm dancing around and I'm happy and I'm just overwhelmed. And I knew that I would come back and do it again. I didn't know I was going to do it over 1,000 times, but I did.
Over 1,000 times,
Yeah.
wow. And you've got a couple of other books with you that you've written.
Yeah.
We won't get into them too much because otherwise we won't
Get
be able to
sidetracked.
talk about what you're here to talk about, but you can mention them real quick right now.
Well, as I said, a lot of the books I've written are dear to my heart. So as you pointed out, I served. Oh, you haven't pointed that out yet.
Oh, no, I haven't. Now, Mary Ellen has served 3 terms as a state senator in New Hampshire, and then you were doing something else too?
I was in both the House and the Senate, and I started out in the House and I ended up in the Senate. And there is kind of a joke in New Hampshire. It's a very small state, and the House in New Hampshire has 400 members. I'm sure it's far more than New York has. And it's like the 4th largest, I think, in the whole world. And so if you live in New Hampshire long enough, somebody's going to ask you to run for the House. I mean, it's just going to happen because they can't find enough people to run. So I started out there, and I started out when my kids went to college, empty nest, and wondering, what am I going to do? And somebody suggested it, and it's all in the book I wrote, Politics and Poltergeists. It's a spoof on the New Hampshire legislature, but it's also very educational about politics. I struggled with, do I call it Politics 101 or Politics and Poltergeists? So I picked the one that I thought fit the book the best, but it really is, because I was kind of naive. I didn't know anything about politics, and so when I got elected, it was kind of overwhelming.
You know, some people, when they see the title, are probably going to think that it has something to do with paranormal experiences.
It does. What struck me about the New Hampshire State House is, I think, the oldest working state house. It's very old. And in the marble hallways, there's all these portraits, hundreds of them, from these old politicians from the past. And when I was there, I used to look at them, and I was fascinated with, who were these people? Who were they? And so when I wrote the book, I picked several of them to be poltergeists, to be ghosts, who are educating this naive young politician.
Okay.
So it's kind of a fun way to learn about New Hampshire and politics in New Hampshire. So.
And then
and the second
something
book
about faith.
This is a novel that I wrote. This actually is one of my first, I would say it's maybe my 3rd book. I wrote this book after I finished my master's in writing because I didn't feel adequate to write it. And it was a very important book because it looks at, it's about 3 girls in the late 60s who get caught up in basically a religious cult.
Oh, okay.
And it's how they work through it and what happens to each one of them. And it really exemplifies how people get caught up in this and what can be the outcomes, because they each have a different outcome. And so this is a book very dear to my heart, and I think an important book. A lot of people who've read this, who've had negative experiences in this kind of environment, find it very helpful and very healing. So I think all of my books have that kind of little bit of a healing theme to them.
Now, you said that hiking Mount Major had a healing effect on you because you had PTSD. Would you like to say something about what caused it? It kind of started out in your childhood.
Yes, it's interesting because I remember when I was kind of tying it back to the political thing, when I was in the New Hampshire House, we had a bill one time that dealt with recovered memories. And I kind of poo-pooed it. I was like, oh, how can you not remember something? I didn't understand, and I thought, I didn't dismiss it, but I just wondered, could you really have that happen? And I remember very clearly when I was 57, an event occurred. One of my grandchildren came to visit, and I went into anxiety attack, panic mode, and I couldn't figure out why. I just was convinced something imminently bad was going to happen. And to the point that, I was just, asking my children, call the doctor, it was just crazy. And I knew it was as it was happening, but I couldn't understand it. And in my hiking, I was able to connect the dots over things that had happened over my lifetime, because that wasn't the first time. It had happened when my own children were that age. It had happened when my other grandchild was that age. And so then I began to realize it wasn't about my grandchildren. It was about what happened to me when I was that age. And so it's not that it was completely a recovered memory, but it was a remembering something I had suppressed my whole life.
Okay, so basically it hadn't entered your mind for a long time.
No, I had really pushed it so far down, because sometimes when something is so horrific, especially for a child, that you just can't make sense of it, it's too painful. You just don't want to face it. You don't want to think about it. You try your best. It's amazing how your brain can really trick you. It can really force you to do things or see things differently. And so in this case, it was always there, but it was under the surface. But when my children reached that age, or my grandchildren, a child that I loved,
it would trigger
that. It triggered it.
It triggered the panic.
PTSD.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going to see a doctor, and she immediately diagnosed me with PTSD, and I got the treatment I needed. But it was through my hiking that I found healing, because every time I would go to the mountain, I think there's a combination of connecting with nature, of being physically fit. You breathe heavy going up a hill. You fill your lung with oxygen, and your brain is working, and you've got all this going on, and then you're also thinking, because you're away from work, you're away from home, you're in this beautiful place where you're alone with your thoughts, and you can sort out things. That's why I say wandering and pondering, because that's what I did, and I began to understand better what had happened and put those pieces together. And what was really remarkable is I ended up going to see my dad, who I'd never discussed any of this with anybody, never told anybody. And I asked him, at the suggestion of the doctor I had seen, if I could tell him what I remembered, and if he could tell me if it was real, because I still didn't want to believe it, And he agreed, so I described to him what I remembered, and his reaction was startling in a way. He was shocked. He said, "I can't believe how much you remember, how much detail." And he said, he was dumbfounded by that. And I said, "So was it true? Did it really happen?" And he said, "Yes, but there's one thing you have wrong. It didn't happen just once." So that was the end of that discussion.
Oh, okay.
But, it ended up being that my hiking really, and I think this can be true for anybody who's dealing with stress or trauma or something, connecting with nature, hiking, walking, whatever it is that you like to do, gardening, whatever it is that you're getting out there and surrounding yourself with the air and the trees and the rocks and all this sort of thing, you can help heal.
Yeah. When you and I spoke on the phone, we had decided that we should mention some ways that we can protect children.
Yeah. I grew up in the 50s, and back then there wasn't really a child protective services. There wasn't really, people kind of viewed what. Excuse me, have some water. People kind of viewed. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
What happened in the home was the home's business. There wasn't the protection there should have been.
Right.
And I was fortunate that I had grandparents who rescued me.
They figured out, they found out what was going on, yes.
But not every child is,
But it was because of a comment you made to your
Yes.
grandmother that made your grandparents look into it.
Yes, they rescued me when I got sick, and I remember I was playing at my grandparents' house, and I was probably 4 or 5 years old. And I asked my grandmother, "Grammy, what's a funeral?" And she's like, "Well, what are you asking that for? You're just a little kid." And I told her, my mother said she's going to wear this dress to my funeral. And that's how they found out.
That is pretty creepy. Yeah. So you may only be alive today because of your grandparents. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, and then you also had a difficult marriage. Tell the viewing audience who decided you would marry this person.
Well, that gets to this book.
And what you think the person's reason was.
Well, I think when you have a difficult childhood and you've been abused, you are set up for further abuse in your life. You haven't got the framework or the support system that helps you avoid some of the opportunities for other people to take advantage of you.
And maybe you
Yeah.
can be coerced into
You can.
marrying someone you
Yes.
shouldn't marry.
And so I was very, in my attempt to make sense of my world and to find security, I became a member of this church that I talk about in my other novel. And it was a very controlling, I was only 14 when I got involved.
Oh, is
in
that
it.
right?
I was
Oh.
very young. And so in this particular organization, as soon as a girl reaches 18, she's going to get married off to somebody because they're all looking
Whether she's
for the
in
young
love
girl.
or not.
Well, yeah, that has nothing to do with it. It's what God wants. And so I was basically told, well, God wants you to marry this person. And we had like maybe 3 church dates, so I really didn't know him. And, I tried my best. I really believed that I was doing the right thing because I believed I was a true believer. I had faith. And so I spent a long time, over 30 years, married to him. And it's unfortunate because I think he would have been better off. We weren't compatible. We weren't on the same page. I'm a writer. I like to read. He hates all that stuff. And so we weren't compatible. Even though this so-called minister or person who spoke for God said that we were supposed to be married. So I tried my best. I spent a long time there. But then I ended up, as I say, I think a lot of women in this generation, my age, end up in 50s or 40s or 50s or 60s accepting that their marriage maybe is over and moving on. And that's a tough thing to do. Again, the hiking helped me a great deal to find a way to feel good about myself, to find a way to expand my horizons, to build my self-confidence, and to sort out all of these things that, puzzle you. Why did this happen? Why did that happen?
In reality, though, you had every right to feel good about yourself all of your life,
Yes. Well, you don't know that when you're being
because
told otherwise.
nobody told you that. Nobody told you that.
I was told the opposite.
Right,
And,
right.
and so that's we can talk about children being abused, but also women who are battered or are put in a situation where they lose their identity. And there's a real systematic thing that goes on for women who are in those kind of circumstances. And one of the things that I find now that is important to me is to share the story in hopes that it helps others. If I wish I had known what I know now. I didn't. You know?
Well, as far as protecting children, I wanted to mention that children should find somebody that they can say something to.
Well, children don't know.
They don't know.
Here's the thing that's really, it's bizarre, but it's true. When you're a child growing up in a bad situation, you don't know there's anything else. It wasn't until I got in school, I would say 10 or 12 years old, that I began to look at other children, and especially other children's mothers. And I began to wonder, was it different? Was mine normal and theirs different, or was theirs normal and mine different? And I think part of the thing, perhaps this is why the hiking appealed to me, I overthink. I'm always trying to figure it out. And as a child, I began to notice that my experience wasn't exactly the same as others. There were actually mothers who loved their daughters. That was amazing to me. There were mothers and daughters who interacted, who smiled and had good times, and that did 2 things. It showed me that maybe what I was experiencing wasn't normal, but also gave me hope. Because you get 2 times, if you're lucky in your life, you get 2 times to experience the parent-child relationship. The first one, you don't have any choice. You're born to whoever you're born to. But the second one is your children. And so when I had my daughter and my son, I was able to experience a more positive parent-child relationship because I loved my children. And I could do the things that I didn't get to experience, but I could experience it vicariously. And that was very healing for me. Very healing for me. And sometimes people will say, in my book, I dedicate this book to my 2 brothers. There were 3 of us in this family, and we were 1 year apart. I was the middle child. And both of my brothers also suffered abuse. And a lot of people would say, well, look what you've done, Mary Ellen. You were a state senator, you were, a business person, you were a writer, you were this and you were that. Why are you successful and my 2 brothers not? And I look at that and I think, well, first of all, I don't think of myself terribly successful, but some people do. But I think that it's because somehow I was able to understand, I was able to put the pieces together and find a cause, which in the case of my brothers was to take care of other people. Nurturing others and helping other people helps you so much. And so by helping my 2 brothers, I became the mom. I became the one who cooked the meals and washed the clothes and got them ready for school and encouraged them when they were discouraged and listened to them when they were having difficulties. Somehow that helps you do better yourself. It's an interesting thing that happens.
It feels good to be nice to other people, doesn't it? Yeah, it really does. I imagine it's about time we should probably move along to the pictures that you've selected to show. And
let's do that.
And you can tell a little story about each picture.
Yes. So I love this mountain so much, and that's why I call it my mountain friend. And I think towards the end of the book, there's a particularly interesting essay about hiking in November. You may remember it. When it was kind of near the conclusion of my time hiking, and I had this most amazing, I would call it almost like a vision quest experience, where I just really connected with the natural world. And I remember at the end of the hike, I'm kind of coming to the close of the trail, and I'm realizing that it's going to end. And I stop and I look around and I say, I love you, mountain. And then I look over on the path, and there's this tree I've passed 1,000 times that I never noticed, with this beautiful heart shape in it. And of course, after that, I see it every time.
And it naturally formed that way again.
So this is a picture taken from the summit. That's Lake Winnipesaukee, and in behind where the White Mountains are, that is Mount Washington in New Hampshire, which is the highest mountain peak in New Hampshire.
Okay.
You can only see it on a really clear day when there's snow on it, which you can see there's some snow there. And so this was early on when I first started hiking, one of my earlier photos. So here's the trail when you start up the main trail. The blue trail is the main trail. So I used to go up the orange trail, come down the yellow trail and back up the blue trail and then down. So I did like a double loop.
Oh, okay, like a figure 8 or something.
Like a figure 8, yeah. And that would give me about 3 hours of hiking. It's 1.8 miles approximately to the top from the parking lot. So this is the beginning with the trail marker. So this gives you a sense of the trail. This is the orange trail, and you do get to some areas where it's almost hand over fist. It's not...
that was the most difficult one.
This is one of the most difficult parts. There's one on each trail that has a section like this. And I used to... I have to be careful. I fell down twice on the mountain, and at my age, I don't want to fall. So I was careful going up here. It's not hard. Families go up with their little children and backpacks with their kids and dogs and everything. You can easily do it, but it does require at certain points where you have to kind of almost be on all fours to go up over the ledge. And I should add, there's the heart.
Is the heart-shaped.
The heart-shaped tree.
And that's just naturally formed.
Yes,
like
it's
that.
natural. It's probably there was a limb that came off, and you can see it there a little bit better. It's right on the right-hand side of the orange trail coming down, And I should mention, there's a fellow in here, I talk about Art Richardson.
Oh, yes, Art.
Art is, he's famous for hiking. He would hike this 2 or 3 times a day. He lived right there in Alton Bay. And I sent him the book and I said, you know, Art, if I've done it 1,000 times, you've done it 10,000 times easily.
Yeah, really.
And he called me up when he read the book and he said, you know, I have done it all those times, but you saw things I never saw. And so he was looking for some of the things that I talk about in the book that he never noticed. And it's easy because I hiked mostly by myself. I would say 99% of the time, it was just me by myself. And so I would see these things, you know, I would see the rocks and the creatures that they looked like, and I'd notice the colors and the changes and the seasons. So here's an example here. This is a rock coming down on the Orange Trail. You can only see it from one angle. It's behind a couple of trees. And to me, that looks like a kind of ghostly creature or a person with a hood, you know, and if you can make that out.
You know, I'm kind of looking at a mouth.
It could be.
You know,
Yep.
like there's kind of a almost rectangular shape,
Yep.
and with a line through the center, and that looks like a mouth.
This mountain is full of boulders, all different kinds and sizes of boulders that were left there from glaciers. Okay, and it's really interesting, the history of this mountain. So here's another rock that's hidden kind of in the middle of the trees. This is a very large rock, but from a distance, to me, it looks like the head of an animal or a turtle or something.
I'm thinking hippopotamus.
Yeah. It's interesting what you can see
Yeah,
when you're looking at it. And you can only see it at certain lights and certain times of the day and from a certain angle, because it's in the woods. I took a little close-up picture of it. Yeah, so there's lots of them. I only brought a few with me, but there's some. The book itself has a lot of color pictures. Now this is in the spring. In the spring, there's a lot of streams on the mountain, and they can get pretty torrid. I had gone up, a lot of times I had gone up when there was very few people or even just myself on the mountain. And this particular day, I went up and I could not go across the stream. It was that ferocious.
Oh, okay.
And I was surprised because normally this stream bed is dry. But in the spring, you run into these streams. And there's a lot of little streams where you have the little waterfalls and things that are really, really pretty. But it's so loud when you hear that noise and you're standing there by yourself. It's like being with a giant waterfall. You know, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
So this is another path going up. As you can see, there's a lot of rocks. The whole thing it's called the Granite State for a reason.
Is that kind of a cave in the bottom of the
No,
picture?
that's a shadow. That's me taking the picture.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but that's coming up from the back of the mountain, one of the paths. And as you can see, it's all rock. And at the top of the mountain, and even through here on the side, there's a lot of pits in these are granite boulders. And these pits, I learned, were made by lightning strikes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's amazing geology up there.
Well, tell me, did a lightning storm ever come along while you were climbing the mountain?
I was really careful about that. I don't like lightning at all.
You checked the weather reports.
I got stuck a couple times when a storm came and I hurried to my car. But I never had lightning actually striking around me. I would not stay on that mountain if there was lightning because it's just iron boulders that are just attracting all this lightning. That would not be a smart thing to do. This is a really nice trail. This is going up along the Orange Trail, I think. And as you can see, it's very well worn. As I said, about 100,000 people a year hike this trail.
It looks like maybe tree roots that are exposed because the dirt is worn away off of them.
That's exactly what it is, yeah. Now, I have to say, I've been here since the fall of 2018. I hiked this mountain on my 60th birthday, and that's in here. Art and another hiker, and I went up the mountain in the middle of the night to get there in time for sunrise. And it was predicted to rain. I wasn't sure it was going to be very good, but it turned out to be the most beautiful sky. It was pink and red, and we got there just in time to pour ourselves a cup of tea and watch the sunrise. I'm planning to go back for my 70th birthday, which is coming up in a couple of months. So I'm going to be going back to hike the mountain, this time during the day. I won't go up in the middle of the night, I don't believe, but I'll go up during the day and visit my old friend, the mountain. So this is a tree that's in the book in a couple of places. The first year I hiked, I didn't know you could hike in the wintertime. So when the snow came, I was very disappointed, and I stayed home and waited for months and months for the snow to melt so I could go back and hike. And I got there in April, I think there was still a little bit of snow on the ground, and there were people hiking. I think Art was there, and I said, "You can hike in the wintertime?" So after that, I hiked in the wintertime. And my first winter hike, I'm going up the trail, and this tree is right in the middle of the path. But I have bifocals, so I'm looking down to see where I'm stepping, and I literally...
Because it was slippery, wasn't it?
Yes, it was very slippery, and I hit my head right on that bend of that tree, which is, by the way, a very sturdy tree. And I literally saw stars. I was like, oh, really, there's stars. And so that tree was a tree that I visited often. I really, really kind of got attached to that tree. It was metaphoric in many ways. I took it that it was important for me to watch where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it was a lesson I took away from the tree. But also, if you notice, the tree was very curved.
Right.
It had been
right.
molded by natural forces, and yet was very sturdy and very strong. And I just really related to that tree. So that was kind of fun. This is another view. This is where I think in the book, in that hike in November, I talk about kind of visualizing the ancient animals that were living there and seeing them. And that's the portion where I'm looking up and seeing that. Again, this is in the wintertime. That was in the fall when I hiked in November. But this was, hiking it in different seasons gave you a different perspective every single time you hiked. There was something different, whether it was the weather, the trees, the colors, the smells. You know, if it was foggy, there were days when I couldn't even see the lake because of the fog. You know, it was just interesting.
Yeah, you know, the sun shines from different directions at different times of the year too. So the lighting is going to be completely different during the different seasons.
I discovered you don't go up the main trail, the blue trail, in the wintertime. It's on the north side, and it's a glacier. I did it once, and I got stuck on the glacier, and I couldn't go up or down, and I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do?
Did somebody come along?
Yeah, someone came along, and I just kind of slid down, and they caught me. But, you know, it was very scary. So after that, I went up the orange trail, which is facing east, so the snow was always melted, and, you know, there wasn't forming this ice. And the other side, the brick trail, was usually okay, but that blue trail, no, not in the wintertime. Yeah. So this is looking down at the lake. This, you can see the ice hasn't gone out completely yet. This is part of Winnipesaukee. This is the Alton Bay kind of part. And the lake that's way beyond, you see the white on the top there, I'm pretty sure that's Squam Lake, which is, if you've seen the movie there with, what's it called? It'll come to me. About the father and daughter on Golden Pond.
Yes.
That's pretty sure that's where that was taped.
I wasn't remembering the title, but I remembered that it was Jane Fonda and her father, Henry Fonda, were in the movie. Yeah. And so was Katharine Hepburn.
Yes. Yeah, that's where they filmed that. So it's a nice small lake. And this is me in one of my winter hikes. I don't remember what year that was, but I would guess probably 7 or 8 years ago. And you can see how the weather varies tremendously. And this is one of my favorite photos. In fact, I put it on the book here. I had gone to work that day, and I worked in Durham, New Hampshire. And I got home at 5:30, and I said, you know, I've got 3 hours of daylight. If I jump in the car, I can go over and hike the mountain. That's why I'm wearing, you know, a necklace and
that's why you look
kind of dressed
kind
up,
of a little bit dressed
so
up.
I just
for
ran over to the mountain
climbing.
and hiked up there as fast as I could, and somebody took my picture. So yeah, any day I would go. It would be really nice. So this is a really special picture because in August about 2013, I believe, or 14, we had a group of 52 of us adults go up to the top to watch the Pilates meteor shower.
Okay.
And it was organized by a fellow named Rex Gallagher, and we brought our sleeping bags and we went up there to wait for the meteors, which was supposed to start around 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. And we had a couple of experts in geology who were telling the stories about the lightning strikes and what was going on. And then there was another UNH professor talking about the night sky and showing us various things about that. And we all told our stories of hiking. And then about 1:30, see how there's a few clouds there?
I see that.
Yeah,
yes.
well, the clouds started to come. So we think we saw maybe 20 meteors before the clouds obstructed the view. And people
Okay.
got kind of bored. So Art and I went up and down the hill 3 or 4 times that night, helping people find the parking lot.
Oh, okay. Because by that time it was after dark.
Yeah, we were kind of tired of sitting there with the mosquitoes and not being able to see the the meteor shower. So those are my 3 books that I brought with me today. So Faith is, again, it's based on a lot of my experiences. Everything in it kind of happened, but I wrote it as a story, as a novel, because I think it makes it a little easier for people to read it. Norenberger is it's a fictional story, pre-settlement New England, one of my fun books. And then Politics and Poltergeists is based on my experiences in the New Hampshire House. It's kind of a spoof on the New Hampshire legislature. But New Hampshire is a very political state. It's the first in the nation primary. And like I said, if you live there long enough, you're probably going to get dragged into politics some way, and maybe even serve in the House, which is a great experience, by the way.
Oh, is it really?
That helped. Well, that helped me because I had been so isolated.
Yeah, yeah.
That getting out there, it did 2 things for me. It helped me get out of my shell a little bit, and it helped me gain confidence, because what I learned was I had something to contribute.
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
value. So
Yeah, I don't really see myself serving in a political office. I find other ways.
Yeah.
I have a television program.
Yeah.
I use that to get important information out to people.
Well, I really, I did 3 terms. So my first term, I had no clue what was going on. So I was on a learning curve. And I had a number of fellow colleagues, both parties. I never thought of myself as being strongly one or the other. I'm independent. I'm still undeclared. But they mentored me. They helped me to learn the jargon, for one thing, of being in a political arena, and also how to get things done, because it isn't just as simple as we think it is. And so my second term, I began to really have more of an impact, actually, and help people. And I can tell you stories about that sometime if you want. And then my third term, of course, and then I went into the Senate, I felt like I actually made a difference with some of the things I did, because I would take on bills and issues no one else would touch.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, because it might not be politically expedient. There was issues with child protection, changing the statute on incest and things like that nobody would want to. They just didn't want to deal with that. But I would work with the district attorneys and the people who had been victims of this, and help them through and get things done. I had a gentleman who came to see me in the Senate who said, I want you to sponsor a bill for me. I'm 80-some years old, and when I die, I want my 4 sons to take my pine box I built and bury me in the private cemetery in our land, and you can't do that in New Hampshire because you have to go to a funeral parlor. And
Okay.
so I helped him with that, and we succeeded. And so little things that maybe only impacted a few people, or maybe impacted a lot of people, but I felt like I really did make a difference. Not in a way that you're going to go, oh, we'll remember her forever, but in a way that for that moment in those people's lives. So I have some very fond memories. I also have some very scary memories, but those were very fun things that I enjoyed doing.
Yeah, well, you found something that was perfect for you.
Yeah, I was pretty good at bringing the people together on a lot of the issues, not all of them. Some things are just partisan by nature, and you're never going to be able to bridge that, but other things you can find common ground, and if you can appeal in a reasonable way to each side, kind of almost as a arbitrator, to help people come together. So I actually enjoyed that a lot.
Oh, well, I'm glad that that worked out for you.
Yeah.
Now, at one point in the book, I remember you talking about throwaway days and letting go anxieties. And when I read Throwaway Days, until I actually read, Throwaway Days, I'm thinking, what does she mean? Where you just take days off and just sort of waste time or something? I don't know.
I think I had to give myself permission for recreation. I think I had to, because I was so determined to prove my value, whether it was my parents or my husband or whatever arena, that I constantly had these to-do lists. And I mean, if I got everything done on my to-do list, then either it wasn't enough on there to start with, and I better add something, or I got to do more things. There's got to be more to this. So I had this self-evaluation thing that I could never possibly achieve. And so I started to look at, okay, well, I want to feel better about myself. If I keep making these impossible tasks for me to do, I'm always going to feel bad. So I need to have time to just say, it doesn't matter. I need to have time to recreate. That's valuable. It's not, it doesn't have to be measuring by tasks I completed or money I made, or, it can be measured by how I'm feeling, how I'm taking care of myself. And so I had to practice that. I had to learn to do that. The hiking helped me, because what does hiking do? Well, I could check off exercise.
Yes,
I could check
yes, you
off,
could.
all these things, and that's good. It helps me to do it. But I also had to understand that it was good for me, and it was fun for me, and that was okay. That was a good enough reason.
It was okay to have fun.
Yeah.
It's okay to be good to yourself. Yes, yes. Now, I noticed you did not number your chapters.
I didn't, because these come from essays scattered over 10 years from many journals. And when I sat down to write this book, I needed to have I don't want to say a compass, maybe a compass. I needed a way to write it that it wasn't just chronological, because something that happened in July 5 years ago and something that happened in September 3 years ago might all be together. So I didn't want to, I wanted it to be readable. So you could actually pick up almost any of these individual essays and read them, but in an order that I hope helps to keep that thread of the story going. Because the basic gist of this memoir is my dealing with my dad. And my dad, I loved my dad tremendously. I thought the world of him. And it's hard for me even now to talk about it. But for whatever reason, I assume it's because he didn't like my mother, for good reasons, but nonetheless, he projected that onto me. And so, so that, in addition to having her abuse, I had to deal with his rejection, which I think in many ways was even more painful for me. And so this 10-year period, all of this is going on, and that's kind of the thread through the book. And I don't want the book...
Yeah, you're writing about what's going on in your life now, but you keep going, inserting things from your past.
Right,
yes.
right. And that's what was happening as I was hiking, and I was allowing my emotions to relax. I was allowing my anxiety to dissipate into the forest, into the path. I was feeling calmer. And when you are calmer and safe, you can start to explore these things that are difficult to deal with. And so over that period of time, and I had this thing with my dad, and I tried my best to prove to him I'm worthy to be your daughter, all this kind of stuff. I had to process that. I had to go through all of that. And so I'm hoping that the book comes across as a positive way to deal with a difficult thing, no matter what it is in your life. I think getting out, in whether it's walking or hiking or gardening or just being in communication with nature, it heals you. It helps you to deal with those difficult things. And maybe because I'm kind of a private person, I never told people. I didn't want to, burden people with my worries and my stresses. So I was sharing it more like with nature. And that was very healing for me. And so that is kind of the thread through the book. And at the end of the book, of course, my father passes away. And part of me was like, I had a hard time because I thought, well, there's no resolution. I tried my best, but there really was never any resolution. But in a way, there was. There was, because I think, despite whatever he said and did, I do think he loved me. But he was so damaged that he just couldn't be the father I needed. Yeah.
Well, according to your book, your mother conned him into marrying her, and it wasn't something he wanted to do right then.
If I could say one thing that I wish people would hear, if somebody has a mental illness, deal with it. My grandmother tried to protect her daughter. She didn't want her stigmatized. And remember, in the 50s and 60s,
back in those days,
it was a
you
big
were
stigma.
stigmatized if you had mental
But the result
illness.
of that was not only did her children, us, my brothers and I, suffer tremendously, a lot of damage, and our dad, tremendous damage, but my mother also missed out. She, because of her mental illness, she had never had a relationship with me. She never got to see her grandchildren. She never had that bond. She missed out on so much. It's heartbreaking. And if I could change anything in that whole experience, and I had no power to do it, it would be for my grandmother, because she was the culprit, because my grandfather wanted to seek help for my mother, but my grandmother would not allow it. And so that, if there's somebody that's suffering from a mental illness of any kind, and there's children involved, especially, get help. Get help for that.
Right,
Don't think
right.
that the children are going to somehow come out of this. They had this attitude that, well, kids are resilient. Kids don't, they'll grow out of it. They won't remember it. My father's comment.
They
I
do
can't believe you
remember it.
remember
They
this,
do remember it.
Well, keep in mind, children don't have the tools adults do. I didn't know what was right or wrong, how I was supposed to. I had no way to defend myself. I was a little girl. My brothers were little children. How do you defend yourself from an adult who's having a mental breakdown? You can't. And so for other adults to sort of say, well, they'll just be okay, they won't remember it. That's not true. We need to protect children. We need to understand if there's abuse or if somebody is suffering, get them help. Not just for the children, for their own sake as well, but get the help, because the whole family can be destroyed by this. And that's what happened to my family. It's a tragedy.
It really is.
And I
It
love
really
my
is.
grandmother. She saved my life. Don't misunderstand me.
Oh, I know.
She was misguided. She thought she was protecting her daughter, but she was harming her daughter and everyone else.
Right, right. Your mother might have been able to get some medication or
Something
something
may have helped
that
her,
would
therapy,
would
maybe
have
something
helped
happened to her. I don't know. We've always speculated. Why did she do these things? We don't know.
Yeah. Well, something goes wrong in a person's brain. You hear stories about people who have mental illnesses where they hear voices telling them to do
Right.
evil things. So
Right. I mean, part of you wants to excuse. You want to find a reason, and I think it's really sad. At the end of her life, I did have a conversation with my mother, and I told her, I said, the really sad thing is you didn't get the help you needed, and we all suffered, including her. And I truly believe that. I mean, now that I'm a grown-up, as a child, all I could do was hang on for dear life. But as an adult, I look back on it, and I just really, and that's why I kind of go back to what I said in the beginning when I was in the legislature, and this bill came up about recovered memories, and it just stayed with me. I was like, what? How does that happen?
You had to get that bill passed,
I
didn't
think
you?
we should revisit
Yes,
that
yes.
and talk
Yes,
about that,
yes.
because it can happen.
Well, I think the reason that there was so much stigma attached to mental illness was people think of it as different than physical ailments. But in reality, the brain is part of
It's a physical
the
thing,
physical.
yeah,
It
yeah.
is a physical
Yeah.
problem. So
We can all have, sometimes we have emotional, like I've certainly had my therapy for good reason, right? It doesn't mean my physical brain is off. It could be, but it was, in my case, it was dealing with things. But there are people, just like you have ailments that make you sick, you can have asthma, you can have heart disease, you can have cancer. Your brain chemistry can be off. Something can be wrong.
well, all of those that are considered physical things, I guess it's pretty much been proven that when we're experiencing those things, that we are suffering from depression at the same time.
Yeah.
Because you don't feel real happy and all that kind
Yeah,
of
right.
fun stuff when you've got the flu
Right.
or cancer and you're
Right.
going through those horrible,
Right.
nasty medical treatments that make you sicker than you already are.
Right.
You're probably not going to be in a really good mental state, that you probably are going to be depressed about it.
I think we really need to pay attention to mental health. I mean, we see it every day in the news. We need to be valuing it as much as we do physical ailments, and start paying attention to it, because sometimes the consequences are minimal, but sometimes they're very significant and lead to more problems. As I say, my two brothers who never really recovered.
Yeah, when mental illness doesn't get
Yeah.
taken care of,
Right.
it tends to grow.
And spread impacts on other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, any medical emergency of any kind, really, or somebody who's sick for a long time, it always, no matter what the health problem is, it always affects the entire family.
Yeah.
So
I have to say, I'm really looking forward to returning to my mountain friend
oh yeah,
in July for my 70th birthday. I hope I can make it to the top. I haven't been hiking too much lately, so we'll see. I can. It's considered a moderate trail by the Appalachian Mountain Club, so it's very easy to do it. You just have to take your time. And I cherish the years that I was hiking. I cherish all the people, the regulars who hike it often, especially retired people. There's a lot, like Art, who go up 2 or 3 times a week and hike this mountain.
he was a very special friend to
He was.
everybody who climbed the
He
mountain,
was.
according to your book.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yeah. He's got a copy of the book, and he, like I said, he was amused because he said, "Now I'm looking for these things that you've got in your book that I never saw."
Well, everybody sees things differently,
Yes,
don't they?
I have this. I have
It's
these.
like,
This filter, I guess.
like you talk about, you hear about people talking about cloud formations and what
Yeah.
they're seeing in them, and 2 or 3 different people could be laying on their backs on the ground and
Yeah.
looking up at them
Yeah.
and see totally different things.
True.
So,
Yeah.
well, we've come to the end of another episode of Fresh Perspectives, and I want to thank you so much for being on. It's
Thank you.
really been fun, and I enjoyed reading your book.
Thank you.
And I hope maybe you can come again and have one of these long conversations.
I'm very happy to. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I just will mention that the book is available at Genres in Westfield. I am going to be teaching a memoir writing workshop at the Arts Center during
okay.
the month of June on Wednesday nights from, I think it's 7 to 8:30.
In the one in
Yes,
Westfield?
the one in Westfield.
Oh, okay.
So that's going to be a 6-week event. I don't know when you're airing this, but anybody can come if they want to. And the last class I'm going to do, the 6th class, which will be around the beginning of July, I'm going to talk about how you can make your book like this, how you can
okay,
actually produce
okay.
your book very, very
Okay.
inexpensively and easily.
Okay.
So for those who have books that they might, maybe a family history, I'm working on a family book right now for one of my cousins. You can actually produce your book really professionally, inexpensively, and it's a lot of fun.
Why don't we do an episode on that sometime?
Sure, I'm happy
Okay.
to.
And I will see those of you in the viewing audience on the next episode.